Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, where real stories sting a little deeper. Let me tell you something strange. You never expect the moment your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't crash through the ceiling. It slips in during the third song of the evening, while someone you love is spinning in someone else's arms, laughing like you were never real. She turned in a slow circle, eyes scanning the crowd, still breathless from the dance. And I wasn't there. Let me rewind just a little. Not to our wedding. Not to how we met. You don't need that. All you need to know is this. By the time she danced with him for the second time, I had already left. Quietly. Without a word. Not out of strength. Out of exhaustion. The room had this golden glow. Expensive chandeliers. Clinking glasses. A DJ who thought everyone was still in college. And there she was. In that navy dress. The one she chose after trying on 15 others while I waited outside dressing rooms pretending not to panic about the price tag. She told me she'd just dance one song with him because it was his birthday. His birthday. At someone else's engagement party. How convenient. He had the kind of smile you could hear from across the room. And the hands of a man too comfortable with other men's wives. The first time I watched. The second time I warned. I said it low, into her ear, with every ounce of fight I had left. If you dance with him again, don't expect me to be here when you return. And she smiled. She smiled like I just told a bad joke. Like I wasn't serious. She always thought I was bluffing. That I'd sulk, pout, simmer, and then drive her home like a good little husband. But this time I stood up without a scene, without a speech. I walked past the champagne, past her purse, past the bathroom door where I'd once stood rehearsing how to ask her to marry me. I left my seat at that long white table empty, and I let her feel it. I don't know what she told people. Maybe that I wasn't feeling well. Maybe that I'd had a headache. But the truth is, my headache had a name. And she was still dancing with him when I disappeared. When I stepped outside that building, the night didn't feel cold. Felt blank. Like even the air didn't care anymore. I stood by the edge of the parking lot, still hearing muffled music through the walls, still tasting the faint bitterness of champagne I hadn't finished. I didn't rush to my car. I didn't pace or curse or cry. I just stood there, looking at nothing, feeling like a man who had quietly folded himself out of existence. Inside, I imagined her laughing, probably still thinking I was somewhere nearby, sulking in a bathroom or hovering by the bar. She never saw me leave. That was important, because I didn't want to be begged or stopped or dragged into another apology she didn't mean. I wanted her to realize, not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly, painfully, that I was really gone. That her husband, the man she could ignore, belittle, brush off, had finally followed through. I drove. Nowhere specific. I didn't go home. Home felt like her space. Filled with her scent, her throw blankets, her untouched wedding albums sitting on shelves she never dusted. I ended up at an all-night diner 40 minutes out of town. I sat in a booth by the window, ordered black coffee I didn't even sip, and stared at my reflection in the glass. Not a single message from her. Not a call. Not even a question mark. I stayed until sunrise. Around 6:12 a.m., my phone lit up with a name I knew too well. But it wasn't her. It was her sister, Fallon. All it said was, "Where are you?" She's freaking out. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because I didn't know how to explain that I'd already left long before I walked out that door. That the moment I watched her laugh in someone else's arms for the second time, a piece of me simply shut off. She thought my silence was a tactic. She thought I was playing some kind of game. But no, this wasn't strategy. It was surrender. I didn't respond to Fallon's message. Not because I wanted to hurt Leora, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for managing her emotions. I wasn't her emotional seatbelt anymore. I wasn't going to stop her from crashing. I'd spent years trying to be steady, trying to be small, trying to be acceptable. And where did that get me? Sitting alone in a booth that smelled like syrup and burnt toast, watching the sun rise over a parking lot. I checked my phone once more around 7:20 a.m. This time it was Leora. The message was short, messy, unlike her usual clean punctuation. It read, "Halden, where the hell are you? This isn't funny. Everyone's asking questions." That told me everything. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about appearances, about the whispers, about her coworker Jace noticing that her husband had vanished after giving her that quiet warning. She wasn't texting to say she missed me. She was texting because I broke the script. I ignored it. 2 hours later, I finally drove home. I didn't expect her to be there, and she wasn't. Her car was gone. I walked into our house like I was entering someone else's life. Everything was exactly where it always was. Her perfume bottle half-capped on the vanity, 3 mismatched mugs in the sink, her heels by the door, tilted like they'd been kicked off carelessly after another night out. The normalcy of it all made me nauseous. I grabbed a trash bag and just started walking around. Not throwing her stuff out. Not yet. Just collecting everything of mine into one place. My sketchbooks, my shaving kit, my college hoodie she used to sleep in when things were good. I didn't know what I was doing. I just needed to move. Around noon, I heard the front door open. She walked in like nothing had happened. Keys jingling, sunglasses on top of her head, and a half-empty iced coffee in her hand. Then she saw the bag on the couch. Her expression shifted. Not fear. Not regret. Confusion. Like she couldn't comprehend a version of me that didn't tolerate it anymore. She stood there for a second, blinking like the room had rearranged itself without her permission. "What is this?" she asked, gesturing at the trash bag. Her voice wasn't panicked, just irritated, like I'd messed up her schedule. I told her calmly, "I'm taking some space." She scoffed, actually scoffed. "Over a dance? Are you being serious right now?" That word, dance, felt like a hammer to the chest. As if everything she'd done, all the things I swallowed, minimized, and endured, had been reduced to that one moment. A dance. I didn't yell. I just sat down on the armrest of the couch and stared at her like I was finally seeing her without the filters I'd spent years applying. "You don't see it, do you?" I said. "You never do. It's not about one dance. It's about how you never even asked if I was okay. You didn't notice I was gone. You didn't call. You didn't care." She rolled her eyes and mumbled something like, "Here we go." And that broke me more than anything else. She had a script prepared, a defense loaded. She was ready to dismiss me before I even started. I stood up and walked past her toward the hallway. "Where are you going?" she snapped. I stopped without turning back and said, "Somewhere I don't feel like a joke." Silence. Then her tone changed, softer, but not apologetic. Manipulative. "Halden, come on. You always overthink things. I was just dancing. It was fun. We were celebrating. He's just a friend." I finally turned to face her. "A friend who texts you at midnight? A friend who knows which side of the bed you sleep on? A friend you touch like I'm not standing 5 feet away?" Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. For once, she wasn't ready with a rehearsed line. I didn't pack everything. I left the shelves I built. I left the breakfast tray I carved for her birthday. I left the nightstand with our initials etched underneath. And when I closed the door behind me, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I didn't go far. I checked into a modest roadside motel just outside town, the kind with flickering signs and vending machines that haven't worked since the early 2000s. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, but it was quiet, and that was all I needed. I dropped my bag on the cracked armchair, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the peeling wallpaper like it might offer answers. Didn't. I kept checking my phone. Not out of hope. Not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I needed to know whether she felt it. The shift, the absence, the cold, gaping hole I left behind when I stopped playing the part she'd written for me. By the time evening came, I still hadn't heard anything. Not a message. Not a call. Not even a lazy "Are you serious?" text. I knew Leora. She always operated on control, on timing. If she hadn't reached out, it meant she was waiting for me to crack first. To return home sheepishly. To apologize for overreacting. I wouldn't. Not this time. Instead, I ordered lukewarm takeout and tried to distract myself with an old crime documentary. But every scene reminded me of something else. The coffee mug she broke during a fight and never replaced. The way she used to lay her head on my shoulder before our Sunday movie nights became separate scrolling sessions on opposite ends of the couch. I wasn't mourning a relationship anymore. I was mourning myself inside that relationship, the version of me I lost trying to keep her happy. Around 10 p.m., my phone finally lit up. Her name. No preview text. Just her name on the screen like a dare. I didn't pick up. I stared at it until it went dark again. A minute later, it buzzed with a voicemail. I listened. Her voice was strangely calm. Too calm. Halden, this is ridiculous. Come home. Let's talk about this like adults. You're acting like I cheated or something. It was one dance. I'm not going to beg you to be reasonable. Click. I sat there holding the phone, but I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty, because her message told me what I needed to know. She still didn't get it, and maybe she never would. The next morning, I opened my eyes to the sound of traffic outside the motel and a knot in my chest that hadn't loosened overnight. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't expect to. Around 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A message from her. I stared at the notification for a full minute before unlocking it. It was a photo, no caption, just an image of her at a brunch table, holding a mimosa, grinning. Sitting next to her, of course, was Jace, the same smug, overconfident man whose hand had wrapped too easily around her waist. In the photo, his hand was resting behind her chair, just close enough to be casual, just close enough to be intentional. I zoomed in on her expression. It wasn't a careless candid. She had posed. Her eyes were angled like she wanted me to see it, to know it, to react. But I didn't respond. I tossed the phone face down and walked out of the room without even brushing my teeth. I needed air, or distance, or something I couldn't name. I drove aimlessly for over an hour, passing through quiet neighborhoods, gas stations, and wooded stretches of road that looked like they hadn't changed in 20 years. I kept wondering why she would send that. Was it a taunt? A test? A power move to remind me she didn't believe I'd really leave for good? The worst part is it worked. Not because I wanted her back, but because it hit me that she wasn't hurting. She wasn't devastated or shaken or even curious. She was just performing, like none of this mattered, like I was a disposable character in a story she'd already rewritten. By midday, I found myself parked outside an old bookstore we used to visit when we first moved in together. It had a dusty window display and a handwritten, cash-only sign taped to the door. I didn't go in. I just sat there, remembering how she once held my hand inside that store, asking me about the kind of life I wanted. I told her then, I just want something real. She kissed me for that. Now I realized maybe I had always been the only one who meant it. It wasn't until the evening of the third day that her parents called me. I hadn't spoken to them directly in months, maybe longer. They were kind to me once, back when Leora and I were still in that golden phase of, look how happy we are, photos and anniversary dinners. Her mom, Marilyn, sounded hesitant at first. She asked how I was doing. I lied and said fine. Then came the pause, the one that always comes before someone says something you can't unhear. Leora told us you stormed out after a fight, and that you've been staying at your brother's place to cool off. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because of the lie, I had almost expected that, but because of the detail. She had already written the narrative. I wasn't missing. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't quiet and deliberate and fading. No, I was just another angry man who overreacted. Another husband with a bruised ego and nowhere to go but his childhood safety net. I told Marilyn the truth. No, I haven't spoken to my brother. I'm not cooling off. I left because your daughter doesn't think I matter anymore. There was another long pause. Then she said, softer now? I had a feeling something was off. I'm sorry, Halden. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to do with that kind of apology when it wasn't coming from the person I needed it from. We said goodbye shortly after that, and I sat in the motel room with the lights off for a long time. My phone buzzed again just after midnight. This time, it was Leora. Not a photo, not a voicemail. A full text message that started with, "So now you're dragging my family into this?" And ended with, "If you're trying to make me look bad, it's not going to work." That was it. That was the line. Not one word asking if I was okay. Not one sentence wondering if she'd gone too far. Just a warning. A warning that her image was more important than the wreckage she left behind. I typed a reply, stared at it, and deleted it. I wasn't going to fight for someone who didn't miss me, only the control they once had over me. A week passed before I went home. Not to stay, just to gather what I hadn't already taken. I waited until I knew she'd be at work. The house felt smaller, quieter, like even the walls had stopped pretending. I walked through each room without lingering. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't sit in the kitchen chair where she used to sip wine and pretend we still had something to laugh about. I packed my sketchbooks, my tools, my passport, and the old journal I used to keep tucked under the bed. The one I'd stopped writing in the moment I realized she no longer asked about my thoughts. When I opened it, the last entry read, "She's drifting, and I'm too polite to swim after her." I smiled. Not bitterly, just knowingly. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Nothing dramatic. Just, "You told me I was being dramatic. You were right, because finally walking away from what I've been tolerating for years is the most dramatic thing I've ever done. Be well." I didn't sign it. She'd know. 3 days later, I moved into a small loft above a used bookstore 2 towns away. The owner, an older man named Grady, let me fix up the shelves in exchange for rent reductions. I started sleeping better, eating again. I picked up my journal and wrote real pages, not just mental drafts of things I was too afraid to say out loud. I even started working with my hands again, building pieces for people who actually saw their value. Leora texted me 2 weeks after I left. It was short. "You really meant it." I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because yeah, I did. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to shout or slam a door. It's to disappear from the story they assumed you'd never leave. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a moment where silence said more than words, or someone underestimated your strength, share your story in the comments. And here's a question for all our history buffs out there. What moment in history do you think completely changed the course of someone's personal life, but almost no one talks about it? Let us know down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this. We'll see you next time.